Hello, everybody. Welcome, Olivier. How are you doing? Can you hear us?
Fine, perfect. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely. Welcome,
Great,
Olivier. We see
thank
you
you.
here today. So you can go ahead. The floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen. Tell me if it works.
Thank you. In the meantime, I'm thanking you for being here. This is really great, trying to together to move to the next era in which we're in, finding the new opportunities. And Engie is definitely one of the drivers of the golden age of green. Solving some of the key problems we're all facing. So looking forward to this panel. Please, everyone, feel free to ask a lot of questions, and we'll do our best to answer all of them. Thank you.
Can you share my screen?
Yes, Olivier.
So that's fine. So yeah, thanks a lot for having me with you today, guys. And I just wanted to take advantage of the short presentation to discuss the revolution of the energy sector. And according to the topic, which is the eco-city revolution, how city could be part of that energy revolution. So let me start with very high-level figures according to again what we are talking about here. Here, really, I just want to focus on the fact that I do believe that we do all agree about the fact that we do need to tackle with the climate change. And most of the time, we can hear that the energy sector or maybe the cities are the problem. My personal belief is that obviously the energy sector is responsible for emitting lots of GHG emission. This is for sure. 50% as well of the GHG global emission are produced within city. But let me assume something. Let me say that the energy sector and cities could bring as well lots of benefits and solutions in the frame of the fight against the climate change. And this is really what when I was in Boston effectively 2 years ago, something we are focused on, and really we do say that cities could help us to meet our target in terms of carbon footprint reduction. So let me start saying that if we want to fight against GHG emission, the two fundamental components of lower GHG emission are definitively reduced energy consumption and energy decarbonization. And if we do want to achieve those two targets, we can do that through a series of levers. The first one being energy efficiency, where the potential for energy savings is huge, and it could be up to 1/3 of the energy consumption globally. The second one is definitively to be able to inject more and more renewables for the power generation, but as well in other sectors such as industries or transportation or heating and cooling, and we will be discussing that point later on, I'm sorry. And the last one, and maybe one of the most important, is really related to energy sobriety. Since I totally believe that we will be able to face the rise of temperature, and we will be able to limit the impact of the climate change if we do change our behaviors and maybe some mentalities and practices that we do have so far. So let's start with a first table with indicators coming from the Internal Renewable Agency. Those indicators are very high-level indicators, but it gives you an idea of where we are heading, and where we should be in the future if we want to, again, to limit the rise in temperature below the 2 degrees C. So you can see that in that table you have indicators related to energy-related CO2 emissions, energy demand, fossil fuel, and the change in fossil fuel demand compared to 2016. What you can see in that table is that the energy-related emission kept growing till the last years, and it is expected to slightly decrease, but just a little bit if you look at the two top figures in yellow, very far above where we should be if we want again to limit as much as possible the climate change impact in the future. The energy demand kept growing and will keep growing in the future. We know that, but we will have to limit as much as possible the increase in terms of energy demand, and we will have to be working on energy efficiency. I'll come back on that later. And in terms of fossil fuel, the good news is that it increased a little bit throughout the last years, and it's gonna decrease, but slightly decrease in the future. But again, the bad news is that we are still above where we should be in order to limit as much as possible, once again, the impact. And if you look at the switch, or maybe the shift in terms of fossil fuel demands, the very good news is that coal is reducing, or the use of coal is reducing, is decreasing almost everywhere. It's not totally true, but almost everywhere. But the bad news is that the coal so far is replaced by gas, since we have to transition. Let me say that that way, we have to transition towards renewables, and to transition from coal to renewables directly might be, depending on the sectors, very difficult. So the bad news is that the fossil fuel is still far above where we should be, again, in the frame of the fight against climate change. Those figures are coming from Bloomberg, so those indicators are slightly different. You will see that. I know that the numbers may be a little bit different, but again, it's very difficult to have figures totally aligned from one database to another one. But the trends are more or less the same. And if you look at the final energy consumption by fuel between now and 2050, the main key learnings of those two figures is that the energy demand keeps increasing, as mentioned. The electrification of end uses is gaining momentum quite significantly. We will see that later. Oil demand will reach kind of a plateau, as we saw that in the international renewable table previously. And gas will continue, to play a key role for decades. And again, we do assume that gas is going to be a kind of a transitioning energy, and green gases will gradually replace natural gas as technology improves and costs decline in the future. And if you look on the right of the slide, the primary fuel consumption in 2050, you still can see that the fossil fuel will play a major role, and the share of renewables, if we keep working or living as we do right now, will be around 30%, which is not enough in order to fight against the impact of climate change. So let's focus right now on energy-related CO2 emissions. I mentioned the fact that we have to reduce globally our GHG emission, but most of the time, in fact, we are talking about electricity and power generation. If you look at the graph and the curves, you can see that according to what we have done so far and all the effort made in terms of renewables for power generation, you can see that the curves related to power generation and GHG emission related to power generation is decreasing quite significantly. So we can see that all the efforts are valuable, and it's going to be profitable for us, again, in order to reduce the GHG emission. But if you look at other sectors, like industry, both for processes or heating or cooling in industry, transportation and buildings, you can see on the graph that we still need to focus on that in order to be able to decrease globally the GHG emission, and globally meaning worldwide as well, but all over the different verticals where we do use, where we do need some energy, and where we are producing some CO2 emission. And if you look on the right of the slide, and again, according to a scenario which is a sustainable scenario issued by the international agency, energy agency, you have the levers on which we should focus on in order to be able to curb the curve which is related to CO2 emission. And again, what we can see, we will have to work on energy efficiency, renewable fuel switching. Nuclear is going to be part of the mix of energy in the future. And in France, it's obvious, but it's going to be the case almost everywhere. CO2 capture is going to be an emerging technology, but we will see that in the coming slide. So my point is that if we want to tackle the GHG emission, and if we want to succeed in the transformation, we have to go beyond the power generation, and we have to focus on heating, cooling, and transportation sector as well. So at the very beginning of the presentation, I did say that, according to me, cities, are part of the solution and are part of the problem for sure, but are part of the solution. This is definitively my belief. So as you can see, we do expect that 70% of the population will be living in cities by 2050. And 50% of carbon emission are produced within city. 50% of the final energy consumption is due to heating. So again, this stresses the importance of the heating and cooling sector. And regarding the cooling, we do expect that the cooling demand will increase in the future by almost 200% between 2016 and 2050. So the heating and cooling sector are very significant, and we have to pay attention to the sectors in addition to industry and transportation. And when we meet with mayors or authorities within cities, and when they do express their concerns for the future, you have most of them on the left of the slide, and again, it's always related to CO2 reduction and the carbon footprint reduction for a campus, for a city, or for an hospital, for instance. Energy efficiency, since we do know that we could reduce quite significantly the thermal losses. How to inject renewables in order to meet the demand of the citizens, how to inject renewables, but as well local energies. And we will get back on that to discuss a little bit about how to talk about the circular economy, and how to offer to citizens safe and resilient infrastructure in order to meet the demand. Again, to bring to the citizen or the population cost savings and competitive solution, high satisfaction, since the service need to be delivered whatever it takes, and the COVID situation that we have been experiencing for quite a long right now, I think demonstrated the needs for resilient infrastructure. The role of digital is going to be crucial in the future. This is something that has been stressed, if I recall correctly, in the previous presentation, but the role of digital is going to be very important in the future. And another topic which is more and more important is really to bring back nature within the cities. So more and more we have to think about as well nature-based solution in order to reduce what we call the heat island effect within cities. And those solutions can deal with that heat island effect, which is due to the human activity, which is due to the transportation, but which is due as well to the cooling, since when you do want to chill a building, you are producing heat that you reject on the outside. So my job is to promote and to assist people that would like to implement what we call district energy systems. To be honest with you, this is a very old technology. This is not at all technology, but this is a technology, and this is a topic which is of interest right now within cities due to the benefit that they can bring to cities. And more and more mayors and more shareholders within cities are paying attention to those district energy systems. So what is a district energy system? Basically, it's a system where you transfer thermal energy in the form of steam, hot water, or chilled water from a central energy plant to buildings in order to deliver to the buildings heat and cold to meet the needs for comfort, but as well maybe for processes within industries. So this is very basic, and again, this is not really new. We will see that in the next slide. But what we can achieve with this very old decade technology is that we are able to deal with energy efficiency, to bring more and more renewables, and to meet the demand of the citizen of a city. So why I was saying that this is a very old technology, and again, this technology appeared at the very beginning of the last century. So this is not new at all. And at that time, this technology was very simple and composed by, let's say, one central plant fed by coal most of the time, producing steam delivered to buildings in order to meet their demands in terms of heating demand. I'm sorry. And what happened throughout the years is that we have been able to adapt ourselves to the new trend and to the new needs of our customers and adapt our technology. And the good news is that when you look at the graph, the progress we made are tremendous, to be clear with you. So we have been able to lower the supply temperature of our systems. And the main benefits of this is that this increased the energy efficiency of the system. So again, we were at almost 200 degrees C 1 century ago, and we are talking right now about very ultra low temperature district heating with a supply temperature of, let's say, something between 50 to 70 degrees C. And the main benefits of that is that you are reducing the thermal losses, so you are increasing the energy efficiency. You widen all the applicable technologies that could feed those network, and you can see on the top, on the right of the slide, that right now we are able to feed the network thanks to lots of different technologies. The last one being maybe heat pumps, geothermal solution, renewables, solar panels, biogas, biofuel. In the future, it's going to be certainly hydrogen. So the good news is that, again, we are widening right now all the technologies which are applicable to feed this network in order to meet the demand of a city. So this allows us to use more and more renewables at a city scale, renewables that couldn't be used if you had to use them for a standalone solution at a building scale. The good news here is that we are able to use large amount of renewables, so we are able to inject lots of renewables within a city, avoiding lots of GHG emission. It allows us as well to mutualize the means of production, reducing the life cycle cost, the capex and the opex cost throughout throughout the lifetime of the asset, to be clear with you. And the future of that activity is certainly on what we call sector integration and sector coupling. And my belief is that district heating systems and cooling systems enable sector coupling in the future. And this will bring more synergies and more energy efficiencies measures. So if you look at the trend of district energy system in Europe and globally, so if you look at the graph, you can see that the use of fossil fuel is decreased and keep decreasing quite significantly. So the amount of renewables is increasing again, or increases quite significantly. And that table is dated of 2015, if I recall correctly. Just to give you an idea, right now in France we do have 700 systems of that kind, and the renewable share for those systems is around 60%, with a target to be able to reach 65% of renewables of the primary energy use in order to meet the demands of all those systems. So my point is that those systems allows us to decrease quite significantly the use of fossil fuels and to switch from fossil fuels to renewables. And if you look at the global trend, the pace is not the same, but you can see that the trend is the same. And according to all the plans, the urban energy plan that we can see worldwide within cities, we do know that we are going to inject more and more renewables into cities thanks to the system. So we do expect that even if the heat demand will slightly decline a little bit due to energy efficiency, the district energy systems are going to produce around 30% of the energy consumption in terms of heat, compared to 10% today. And another emerging technology is definitively heat pumps. Due to the electrification of the heating sector, heat pumps are going to increase in terms of number of heat pumps installed in the world, and this is already ongoing. If you look at the US, the table may not be totally complete, if I can say that, since the data that I'm showing right now are based on only 660, if I recall correctly, district energy systems installed or implemented in the US. And you can see that natural gas is the main energy used so far in the US. But according to what I saw, I'm not really concerned. I do know that the share of energy renewables will increase in the near future. To me, this slide shows what I call the sector integration and the sector coupling, and to me this is the future of our activity. And if you look at that activity from an investment or an innovation or research and development perspectives, you have here some of the topics that maybe you should be interested in the future, or where it might be interesting for you to invest in the future. And again, sector coupling is really refers to planning and operating the system as a whole system across multiple energy carrier, infrastructure, and consumption. And it's going to create lots of synergies and energy savings. And this is really something that we promote at the European level right now. And we do want the sector coupling to be part of what we call in Europe the Green Deal. According to me, something which is missing right now on the diagram is the storage. Thermal storage, to me, is a key component to enable the sector coupling in the future. and the technology of thermal storage it's not that well developed, and this is certainly a technology in which we should invest in the future in terms of research and development, innovation, and this is the missing component right now to totally enable the sector coupling.
So Olivier, we are 5 minutes away from the end of the talk, so I don't know if you want to open up for a few questions. Otherwise, you can continue until the end. You decide.
Okay, I'm just going to give a few words, to give a few numbers about the market size, just to give you an idea of what we are talking about, in fact. And I just wanted to focus on the current trend and the market drivers for cities, according to again to that kind of technology and district energy system and the interest that cities could have regarding those systems. So you have here the main drivers: urbanization, value for building owner, and long-term partnership for cities and with cities. And I mentioned at the bottom of the slide some of the recent deals that we concluded. All of them are long-term deals, so 50 years, 35 years. All of them are valued above $1 billion, and all of them are related to energy efficiency, modernization, and operation and maintenance throughout the lifetime of the asset. I'm gonna switch that one if you allow me. This is, but you will have the slide if you are interested in. This is the investment, the global investment worldwide, and the trends of the investment in power generation, renewables in power generation. And regarding the DES, I mentioned the fact that again, this is for us a revolution. Again, we came from steam and coal, and now we are talking about blockchain, artificial intelligence. So I just wanted to have a very short list of domains, if I can say that, where we are working on right now, where we should focus on in the future, to be clear with you, and according to me, where it could be very interesting from an investment perspective to invest in the future. And I mentioned most of them already. Energy management is key. This is tied to digitalization. This is also tied to artificial intelligence, machine learning, for predictive maintenance, for predictive for pollution forecast. And this is gonna be key for us. And with machine learning, we do expect to generate more and more energy savings in the future. Decentralized on-site generation. Again, new technology are going to appear. Solar heat pumps are some of them, but again, we do expect that most are going to appear in the future. Thermal storage, to me, it's a key component which is missing right now. And again, this is something we discussed with the European Commission, to be transparent with you. And I think they totally agree on the fact that we should focus on thermal storage and to allocate some R&D cost in the future in order to promote the technology that will enable, once again, the sector coupling. Blockchain as well could be an emerging technology for us. To be clear with you, we are already on that, but this is more related to the certification of the origin of the energy, if I can say that. But let me assume that in the future, and based again on the sector coupling, that peer-to-peer exchange will appear, and peer-to-peer monetization of the exchange will appear in the future, and blockchain technology might be an enabler for that. And the last one, so CO2 capture is going to be an emerging technology. It's already existing, I know that, but again, we will have to improve the technology in order to industrialize, if I can say that, at a very large scale, the CO2 capture. New cooling technology to get rid of refrigerants. I do believe that this might be a disruptive topic to focus on and to investigate. Green hydrogen, I already mentioned that. Hydrogen is expected to play a key role in the future, and maybe not to replace natural gas, but to replace part of the natural gas used so far. Financing, we will need to invest in a new business model, to find new business model in order to promote what we call the net present value approach. So the net present value approach is ready to assess the value of a project throughout the lifetime of the asset. And we do believe as well that we do have to change the criteria selection for projects, and to bring or to take into consideration the external positivities that district energy system could bring and could provide to a city in the future. So this is as well a topic on which we will have to investigate and to improve.
Okay.
My last slide, just to give you a few figures about the investment which are needed in Europe. We do expect that we should triple the number of DES. We expect 47 billions of investment in order to again to promote those kind of solution. Heat pumps is going to be an emerging technology, and this is certainly something you should look at. And all the green package and the recovery plan are going to dedicate a bit investment to the greening of the energy sector. So pay attention to that. And again, this is a very old technology, but to me, a very promising technology.
Excellent. Olivier, thank you so much for this.
Hello, everybody. I hope that you're all doing well. First of all, I'm really happy to participate in this event organized by Innovo. So thank you for the invitation, Alistair and Michel. I think it's in a rather gloomy context. It's very exciting to see how entrepreneurs can change the world in a sustainable way. So my name is Marie de Lauzon. I'm the COO of 2CRSI. I know the name is quite difficult to remember and to pronounce. But to give you a trick, usually English speakers pronounce our name too crazy. So maybe with too crazy will be easier. And why too crazy? I think because we are proud to say that we are able to design and manufacture IT servers that others have never dreamt to make before, or maybe even never dared to think about before. And I'd like to talk to you today about the way we can combine IT and sustainability in each city on the planet. I read that before a hurricane, Walmart would fill their stores with strawberry Pop-Tarts. This is the result of their data mining and finding that stores sold 7 times more strawberry Pop-Tarts before a storm than usually. So this big data is very useful data for Walmart indeed. And incidentally, it also whets my curiosity as I never tasted Pop-Tarts. But beyond that point, talking about big data, we see it's quite useful in a commercial way. It's also quite useful for good. Of course, no need to say that these weather data can also be very useful to anticipate hurricanes from a practical point of view in order to protect the local population. I know I heard Olivier before me mention that before. I think there is no need to emphasize how the IT capacity to compute and store all that data requires a lot of servers and power, which means a heavy carbon footprint. And I won't elaborate either on how pressing this environmental issue is. Fortunately, I'm an optimist and I have faith in mankind. And I fully agree with British historian Toynbee, that you probably all know, in the sense that new civilizations are born in environments that are unusually difficult. He wrote that the greater the challenge, the greater the stimulus. And I think that given the climate challenge that we're facing today, today must really be a new dawn. In this environment, 2 crazy teams promote a new approach to IT. First, with a lower power consumption. This is something we'll go back on. As you understood, we are talking about sustainability. then with a tailor-made approach to customer-specific needs, as opposed to the general trend promoted by many manufacturers that say that who can do more can also do less. We want to make sure that you're not using a Formula One to drive to the bakery. So this may sound trivial, but it's not the usual approach to IT today. And we think it's really part of a sensible, cost-effective, and environment-friendly approach. Then third, also with outside-the-box solutions. I wrote here mutualizations of components, because these are outside-the-box solutions are literally outside the box, because we mutualize some components, such as power supply or fans, outside the servers. And by putting them outside the servers, it allows us to have more space inside in order to increase computing density, which is what many customers are still looking after. And it's also a way to make those elements more efficient outside the box. For instance, if you take fans, we remove fans from inside the servers, and we use much more efficient fans at the back, at the rear of the racks, and those fans at the back are much more efficient than the smaller ones that you could have inside the servers. And also, last, we also promote local production. Today, with 6 production sites, 4 in Europe, 1 in the US, 1 in India. And this local production means less transport, but also more local skilled jobs. And this is something we think important to develop, to really grow a local ecosystem. So the first point was to lower power consumption. And the first way to lower power consumption is to find more efficient cooling systems to dissipate the heat produced by the electronic components. So here we're talking about, for instance, the processors and graphing cards mainly, which are the ones that produce the most heat. And 2 CRSI teams have started quite a few years ago to make major progress in air cooling, thanks to the mutualization of fans that I was referring to at the rear of the rack. And since then, they also have developed 2 other technologies. One is immersion, where you have servers that are fully immersed in a tank filled with a dielectric fluid. So you have servers that are set vertically in a very large tank. And the second one is what we call direct liquid cooling, which means that a fluid in a pipe goes through the servers in order to cool them. And so here on this slide, you can see a rack equipped for DLC. So you can see some pipes in blue on the left-hand side, bringing in cold water, and also pipes in red evacuating warm water. And you would have noticed that there are also some big fans that are here to dissipate the remaining heat that was not dissipated by the fluid. And so the double benefit of those technologies with direct liquid cooling and immersion cooling is that first, by cooling down components directly, they improve their performance level, and also they reduce the probability of an issue on the component. So it also reduces maintenance. And then the second benefit is that cooling technologies allow huge savings in power, as we don't need much or any at all air conditioning anymore in the data center. So because these type of cooling are just self-sufficient, and you don't need to add extra air conditioning. So this is good for the planet, but it's also good to make savings when you think that electricity is the first cost item in a data center. So I think usually, I think it's good when you think about sustainability, it's sustainable means good for the planet, but it also means that it's a good solution going forward in the long term. And also, I would say that the beauty of immersion and even more direct liquid cooling is that they allow an efficient reuse of waste heat. We've been talking, Olivier has been talking about waste heat mainly from industrial production. Obviously, data centers produce a lot of heat themselves. And so this heat can be used for instance, for domestic hot water, can be used in swimming pools. For instance, one of our clients has today won the contract to bring servers to heat the swimming pool for the Olympic Games 2024, for greenhouses, or even for district heating that also we were talking in Engie's presentation, if you further increase the temperature a little bit. So practically speaking, you can see here just a few examples of projects that were carried out by some of our partners. And these projects demonstrate that we have existing solutions today. This is not looking at the future. This is looking at infrastructure that is already working now. These projects are, for instance, for schools and universities, which could then benefit from additional computing at scale for their students and scientists, as well as obviously hot water and seasonal heat. Projects in hospitals and social centers. So beside heat and an increased computing capacity, it was also interesting for hospitals to be able to have their data stored on premise. So this is one additional element to take into account. And last, another example for use for urban farming, which is, so it was a project using IoT in order to optimize the crops. And this IoT used computing capacity that was on premise also, and generating the heat necessary to grow the plants. So these were projects where the beneficiaries of heat and compute were the same. But these systems mean that we also have the ability to grow these edge data centers, use for external customers. So if you link them all together, it can make a huge network of data center. Today we're talking also for energy. People look at solar, for instance, solar systems. We know we have large solar plants, but also more capacity that is remote and located locally on the roofs, for instance. So this is more or less the same approach. So today, what we know are the large data centers, and we are used, when you mention the name data center, usually you would think about a large operation, so in a very big building and very modernly equipped, and also quite big in order to benefit from economies of scale in terms of air conditioning, in terms of cybersecurity. So it can be on the equipment side, but as well on the software side. But beside those large data centers, we see a new trend emerging, and that trend is the trend of edge data centers, which are smaller, which are closer to users and data sources, therefore providing lower latency. And they are also quite flexible, as you can add, if you need extra capacity, you just add one more location, one more edge data center. So scalability is much bigger when you look at these data centers compared to the large ones, where basically once you're full, you fall, and you have to think about a new investment in a new infrastructure. And then last, the edge data centers also allow to make a very efficient local reuse of waste heat. So this is something quite interesting. Obviously, large data centers can also provide some heat, but then it's not the same thing. You would have to build a very specific infrastructure to be able to use that heat in a district heating system, for instance. So this picture looks very much like the one that was presented by Olivier before. I think this is more or less what sustainable digital cities would look like tomorrow. And I hope that if we still have some friends from Boston, I hope this is something we can talk together about, because it would be great to see Boston looking like this. So obviously, this new sustainable city would use renewable energy, would also have a combination of large data centers providing heat, and also small edge data centers that can provide computing power, decentralized computing power, as well as a local heat source. So I think I managed to keep the time. Just as a summary, I think it's really, we all know that it's really critical for human growth and development, that it's really important to be able to still continue developing capacity in IT to allow human growth and development. But I think that with technologies allowing lower energy consumption and the reuse of waste heat produced by servers, we could avoid millions of tons of carbon emissions each year. And as you could see with the projects I mentioned before, this is not a dream, this is not a vision of the future. These projects already exist, so technology that can be used to implement similar projects are already existing today. And so I count on you. I know we have many people connected online, so I count on you to promote this idea as much as you can, because I think it's good for us, it's good for both human beings and for the planet. So I hope that people can promote this, and so that it becomes as obvious as recycling paper, for instance.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Marie. Thank you very much for this great presentation. A couple of questions. So, I'm digesting all the information we got from this morning. It's amazing. So it seems like quite a huge undertaking, a major transformation, a revolution. What are some of the companies maybe you see that are very promising, game-changing, disrupting, that you think the audience should be knowing about, maybe getting close to, that you think, besides, your company, Too Crazy? I love the name. I finally can pronounce it very well. And I love the name. So what are the companies, you think we should know about that are driving that transition? Who are going to be the leading companies tomorrow?
I think the leading companies driving this trend tomorrow might not exist today. And actually, running the risk of upsetting also my predecessor, I think even in energy, the leading company in tomorrow's, for instance, for renewable energy, might not even exist today. So it's a difficult question. Of course, we're working with many partners, but today I have to say they are rather small. So it's on the French side, people like Tresorio, for instance, who have developed really a great technology. But not only, we mentioned before that, so basically the project people that were involved in the various projects I mentioned were so Tresorio, Steam Energy, sorry, and then WindCloud, was the promoter of one of those projects. So, but actually there are many companies today who are involved in this. I think none of it has a critical size today, because as I said, also it's an emerging trend. People are still used to think about data centers as large operations, but it's not. So I think it's really time that we get started on this type of projects.
Excellent, excellent. And what are you missing? What is, we heard this morning, radical, acceleration is needed. So, what are you missing to really push this forward and make your projects go faster? And just in general, voice for also, we had Olivier from Engie, we'll have, Schneider Electric later on. How do we push this forward more faster, given, what everyone's been saying, that it's so critical to us all humans? That, so what can we do? I feel it's too slow.
I agree. And I think what we are fighting for today is really to get more recognition. And when I said I count on people to spread the word, it's really that. Talking about Too Crazy, because this is what I know best. When I meet some people, investors, or because we are a listed company, when I meet some potential partners, and we meet for the first time, then so first we get introduced. They come to us, they come to visit us to understand what kind of technology we are able to offer. And then sometimes they tell me, look, but I don't understand. This is great. This is really how IT should be. So why don't newspapers talk to you talk about you all the time? And so I think Too Crazy is also a young company. We are today 350 something. We have on the manufacturer side, we are roughly 150, and also we have some distribution. So you see, if you look at the manufacturer side, 150 to compete with the giants in our industry, it's not much. So I think what we need is also to have decision makers who dare, inviting new companies such as Too Crazy at the table to at least present the solutions, and then they can decide. But if they stick to the usual ones, the usual suspects, nothing will change. So it's really at least have the awareness, and then not be afraid of inviting smaller company to talk to.
Excellent, excellent. So I do think, for me, this is all exciting. We should have a celebration. I think, a bit like South by Southwest, having sort of a conference. I think Boston is the right place for that, because we have every city is connected to Boston in some way, shape or form, other countries. And, maybe that's what we need to do. It's sort of an event like today, but, bigger, physical. I can see mixing maybe, all of you, but also things that are more popular for the,
Yes.
More people like artists and so on. We have Mickey from Atlanta. There's a lot of artists over there, and DJs who are also promoting this type of energy. So, I do think, there's a need of really bringing people together around a new opportunity that creates jobs. There's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs, for startups, for venture capitalists, because if the transition is going to happen, you're right, some companies are going to lead tomorrow and not known today, right? Which means there's exponential value to be created and to be made. So the goal is exciting, yeah.
And sorry, if I may add, we have always tried to, we have this strategy to source our components as locally as much as we can. Obviously, there are some components we cannot source locally. But I think it's also, from a strategic point of view, it's important that that we try supporting local solutions, because at times of crisis, such as the one we had with COVID, I think we would be more independent. And I think it's important that we have, when I said the skilled jobs, we need to have control over that technology locally. So that's also why we think we have this mission to show what we French too crazy people and we Europeans and we also Americans are able to do.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. Any questions from the audience? Any questions? I have a question if no one has a question. So for me, one question, maybe, the smart grid is great. If I'm not mistaken, one of the vision or, what people are imagining is basically solar panel on houses, battery chargers, on the houses to store basically the energy, some sort of blockchain system to exchange energy between the community, and basically shifting from what we know today, electric mobility. But then how do we do when there's a cyber attack? Is that also a concern and maybe technology that needs to be sourced, or is it an opportunity for entrepreneurs to think about maybe building some sort of solution for that arena?
Yes, of course, we need to think about the threats, but I was talking before about having a mix with large data centers where in which you can really benefit from economies of scale, and also edge data centers. So when you look at large data centers, they are able to really build a strong shield around them and to be able to face cyber attacks. Of course, probably more than the smaller ones, but they're also more exposed. So I think overall, having this kind of a grid with edge computing does not represent an additional risk, I think, because when you have, of course, you would also have a redundancy. So basically, you have your data somewhere, but there is a copy somewhere else. So there is not a huge threat on that side. But to come back on the other element you mentioned, I'm not so sure. I agree with when you say also having storage and basically with this view to be self-sufficient. I think we are not there yet, because storing electricity is still quite expensive. So I believe more in changing the way, for instance, changing buildings, and maybe that's a good introduction for the next speaker. But if you have buildings that are better isolated, you can then use renewable energy, which I think is really this energy is really the future. Actually, it's today's energy already. But if you use renewable energy, which is the cheapest energy on the planet today, you use it when it's, of course, there is intermittency, but if you use this renewable energy when it's available, and then you, obviously, since your building is isolated, then you can increase the temperature a little bit more when energy is quite cheap, and then you can let it go down progressively. So I think there is a more sustainable way even to manage energy than using storage. But that's another topic. But I'm very interested in renewable energies as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Marie, for this speech. We don't have any more questions, so I think we can resume the call. Thank you. This was
Thank
really.
you for invitation.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Bye, Alistair.
Bye-bye. And we'll be, for those who hold tight until the end, we'll have a little drink and networking session all together. It's party time. Welcome to Chris Sowa, the Global VP of Schneider Electric, for this presentation that's going to last from 2:15 to 2:45. Please feel free to ask any question, and then we'll have one more session and we'll go into networking for those who will be there with us, and we can exchange on the day and how it went. We're very happy to have you today to share with us what you are envisioning for the future of cities. And we have about 200 registered participants, about 50 participating right now. People will be rewatching the presentation, and we'll look forward to learning how we can help, what type of technology, entrepreneurs, what can we do as investors, as cities, to help you achieve sooner this vision that is very important for all of us in humanity. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing from more of the participants and the other speakers. Just get myself powered up here. So very excited to be a part of the Eco-City revolution here today because Schneider Electric, we're really all about powering and digitizing the economy. And we think that that's really key to making the next generation of buildings and sustainability possible. So a lot of people, misunderstand what Schneider Electric is. They think that we are a company that's focused on providing electricity, which ironically, even though that's in our name, that's not what we do. We provide the solutions that make, electric and digital possible. And I'll describe a little bit more about what that means, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Schneider Electric energy management software and how we think that that can be a key part of the eco-city revolution and the digitization of buildings in particular. So just a little bit about Schneider Electric, based in Paris, a truly global company with about 110 countries that we do business in. We do about a third of our business in North America and very large in China, almost equal in terms of the size of the geography. Western Europe, 26%, and the rest of the world, 16%. So 135,000 employees strong, providing core electrical products and solutions, solutions that help make sure that the digitized solutions that we have today stay on. So we're very focused on resilience, and then also the next generation of digital solutions to enable efficiency. So, a lot of companies today, will talk about, their goals related to carbon footprint reductions and improving efficiency. At Schneider, it's really core to our DNA. We have a very high sense of urgency on this issue, and our management is very focused on being part of the community and the global solution on addressing climate change. To the point where I like to say, we put our money where our mouth is. Myself and all the executives at Schneider Electric have our carbon reduction goals built directly into our compensation. So it's a very substantial portion of our compensation is helping us reduce our own carbon footprint. We're looking to go carbon zero by 2030, and also helping our customers increase radical improvements in energy efficiency to offset the trends and the concerns that we really face as a planet in terms of energy use. You can see that if things continue in the as is, there's a potential for a 40x increase in the amount of electricity consumed as we continue to digitize across the world, and places like India continue to their rapid development success. So if we continue doing it the same way that we have with a fossil fuel-based economy, it creates this massive inefficiency that, from an energy perspective, we believe that electric energy is a highly efficient form of electricity. And even better, we're supporting the transition to renewable energy as a key focus of the future. So we want to have enabling electrical infrastructures that power solar, wind, and also take a look at how we can leverage these solutions more efficiently with new storage solutions, but also help design the next generation of buildings and help those buildings be constructed in a more efficient manner and operated once they're built in a much more efficient manner. So the key disruptions really, that we see as actually opportunities are this energy transition that we're seeing. I like to talk about the state of Texas for as an example. People think a lot of times Texas oil, but it's interesting to note that Texas, if it were a country, would be the 6th largest producer of wind power in the world. So we're really seeing this massive shift of potential for energy transition, even in places where people don't realize it's happening. And then certainly, digital, being a key part of managing these new grid environments with artificial intelligence and softwares, as well as, starting to digitize what we say is one of the last great undigitized industries, which is construction industry. Beyond kind of the CAD and design solutions, a lot of what takes place from a planning process and actually on site within a construction site are still very much manual processes. And we're a part of helping to digitize that world with our ecosystem. So some of the potential savings and things that we see that are possible are radical improvements in electrification, decarbonization, and generating high performance for our customers and productivity really across the board at a global level. So when we say eco-city revolution, really one city at a time, but really making efficiencies in buildings from between 30 and 50% possible. Increasing electrification of things like heating, because it is much more efficient, up to twice as efficient as other sources, and really driving that renewable world that I mentioned before, helping to decarbonize, anywhere from 6 to 40% by leveraging wind and solar by 2040. So those are some of the focus areas we have. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail is where my focus is at Schneider Electric, which is within the energy management software domain. And this quote here is, I think hopefully excites a bit of the imagination. What else could I do? This is the foundation really for anybody that's thinking about construction. How can we change the world, change our cities and buildings in completely new ways? As we think about this kind of a process, that means, really thinking about the full BIM 6D process. We started out the BIM and digital efficiency in construction, thinking about two-dimensional designs of buildings, the architect's building, typically in softwares like a Autodesk or a Nemetschek software, but driving a lot of that initial design in those solutions, then moving to three-dimensional views and renderings. And then ultimately, it's starting to include in the build process, marrying those digital representations to the costs and also the time and technical specification for each and everything that goes into a building, every material, every piece of equipment, actually starting to digitize and manage that process completely. And then adding time as an element of that process as well. So managing the schedule, when the goods and services arrive. And then once a building is actually operational, taking that digital twin or digital copy at this point, because it's not actually running, of all of the as-built things that are in a building, and then transitioning them to the owner operators. And as a part of the operations, not only optimizing that process for things like heating and cooling on an ongoing basis, but then learning about that process and feeding that learning back into design. So if you could imagine, a new way of designing and building, which is very different from today, in the very beginning of the process, rather than kind of relying on rules of thumb on how much a building might cost, like a hospital in Atlanta, what might that hospital cost be based on the specific functions, the types of equipment that are going to be in that hospital, the specific uses of that hospital. but also thinking about, how can I leverage all of the other types of hospitals that have been recently built in Atlanta and around the world that had similar types of objectives, and then also adjust those objectives further by fine-tuning it for carbon reduction and energy efficiency objectives, and then using artificial intelligence, generative design solutions to very early in the process up front, rapidly generate architectures, and in our case, electrical architectures, automatically, and giving a full bill of material to somebody who's doing that design process that is very close and accurate to what will be the as-built later in the process. And then, as we step out into the construction domain, rather than having, pieces of equipment arrive at all different times and be scattered around the building site, actually plan and use digital solutions so that the things that are needed, like the electrical solutions, arrive exactly when they're needed in the project plan. We make sure that there's no overlap in the service personnel that are coming on board. So if somebody's installing electrical wiring, they're not doing it at the same time that somebody is supposed to be doing plumbing or something else on site. And they're literally taking the equipment off of the truck that's been pre-tested and pre-configured, matching it to the design, and making any adjustments for what they see actually on site, taking it off the truck and plugging it right into the building process. So eliminating a lot of the inefficiency in terms of storing equipment on site, potential quality issues because the equipment and materials of a building are not matching what's actually happening within the site. And then transitioning further from a digital perspective, once a set of equipment is installed, rapidly electrically commissioning that equipment, sending all the information about that equipment up to the cloud, and providing electrical and automated permitting processes, and sending information to the different government bodies that are requiring it throughout the world. And then on an ongoing basis, we want all this information to flow into operations, as I mentioned before. So we'll want to make sure that information is obtained by the building owners, all the detailed costs, detailed technical specifications, where it's easily found within the building in the operate domain. So a real opportunity to radically reinvent this whole process. And it really is a circular process from our perspective, enabling things like collaboration as a part of this process. Also focusing on, resilience and security. So cybersecurity has been a very big topic during the elections, but it's also a big topic within critical infrastructure. And as more companies start to add things like solar and wind and microgrids to their infrastructure, they're taking on more of the responsibility that our grid operators have traditionally to make sure that the electricity is always available and that it's totally secure, both physically secure as well as cyber secure. So that's also a part of the important journey that we're on as we think about how do we digitize this building life cycle process, and think about the potential for leveraging previous projects, the detailed technical specifications and architectures, and having the ability to use AI to more rapidly adapt those architectures so that you can use it on a new project and get a much better sense much earlier for some of the cost trade-offs that we should be thinking about on all projects between cost and energy efficiency and carbon reduction. And then as we move into operate, actually building that true building operation system across a building's environment, where we're gathering IoT data from our HVAC and our security systems, our air circulation systems, all of the key sensors that are located throughout the building, and bringing that together for intelligent maintenance, but also compliance and better control and efficiency for those buildings. And for companies that sign up for things like carbon zero, make sure that we're able to track how are we doing in our buildings and facilities toward our goals for carbon reduction. And where we're off track, rapidly be in a position where we can take action and make recommendations on how to take action on toward our journey of reducing carbon and driving efficiency within our facilities. So just to kind of recap, what we see within Schneider Electric, and we want to work closely within our ecosystem partners are really around those three key domains, especially within software. One is radically reinventing this efficient design process, and we've already made some acquisitions in this area in the electrical domain, and we're going to be continuing to partner with companies that help to optimize this next generation of energy landscapes, solar, wind, and storage. But actually thinking about how we can do this, leveraging artificial intelligence and really optimizing it for carbon footprint at scale. As I mentioned, everything Schneider Electric does is at scale. Bring all of this information together so that people can, and not just experts, can start to get a sense of what's possible in the design process, optimizing that building process, helping people collaborate, across all those 5 dimensions, the CAD dimensions, the cost, the project management time dimensions, the technical specifications, and allowing all the collaboration of the key stakeholders throughout the whole project plan of that construction process. And then once we move into operations, as I mentioned before, it's really about leveraging the data to make sure that the building is being optimized, not only from a cost perspective, but from an energy efficiency perspective as well, and a carbon reduction perspective. And that's a really fast overview of how we're thinking about digitizing buildings. I wanted to open up the floor to some discussion and questions at this point. Are there any questions?
Yes. Hi, Chris. So thank you very much for this presentation. So basically, any question for Chris from the audience? Any questions in the chat? So I have a couple of questions, Chris. I just want to make sure people don't have any questions. So basically, can you depict us maybe a little bit? You showed us many slides. In your head, what's your vision of, for example, Boston? In 5 years, what is it going to be looking like, right? And us, having our houses, how is the house going to look? How is the energy going to flow? Yeah.
So there's a couple, as we think tactically, the next couple of years, toward this goal that we have to reducing carbon footprint, let's say by 40% by 2040. There's a couple things that I'm thinking about as we coming out of COVID. One is really repurposing existing buildings. Now, what the buildings are going to look like, is still becoming clear. So there is a lot of malls and retail space that are closing down and might never open up the same way. At the same time, we have major needs for housing in a lot of our big cities like Boston, San Francisco, and other places. Where do we get that affordable housing? So how can we take this excess of space, whether it's office space, because now companies are moving to hybrid offices potentially, whereas they spend some time in the office and some time in the home. And then, retail spaces, perhaps in some cases going away or taking on new forms. So repurposing these buildings, both existing office buildings, making them more collaborative environments, as well as finding ways to, from an energy efficiency perspective as well, reuse what's there, so that we can build that next generation of affordable housing. So I look at existing infrastructure revitalization as being a really exciting opportunity that we see coming out of COVID and helping us solve some key problems. And number two, as we start to build that next generation of energy efficient buildings with solar and wind in places like Boston, there's some beautiful buildings that have been going up, not far from Copley Place that are LEEDs compliant buildings, but we not only want to design buildings that are to make them compliant, we want to monitor them. How are we doing in that building design for the comfort of the people in those buildings, as well as how we can learn to make them even more energy efficient going forward. And then the last part of that equation is the increase in electrification and use of renewable power. So we think about EVs, micro charging stations, being placed throughout the city, potentially maybe 10 years out. I don't know, I'm not going to be the one that's going to guess the timeline, but we can imagine fleets of more automated cars coming through that are electric powered vehicles that need to be recharged at various points in time, as well as robots. So, there's this opportunity to create new networks and logistics that are, going to come into being around these three areas. So again, big opportunity in existing buildings to improve them, and then we have the opportunities for greenfield buildings to learn, what we've done already operation wise, and then create that next generation of microgrids and efficient energy infrastructures to power all this cool digital stuff that we've taken for granted now for some time.
Excellent, excellent. So what are the hurdles to get to the end states? Because maybe I'm going to add another question in that, how important is it also to go to that end state in your eye?
Well, I had that one, the one slide on there, an increase of 3.5 degrees in climate change is, what we're projecting with our Schneider Electric scientists and teams, if we stay on the as is. And so, global warming and climate change, we don't see as a debate. It's happening, right? We literally have the state of California on fire. So people attention, the attention is here. People that are paying attention, and if you're close to these areas, you pay attention. So I think that's the urgency level for us to change. I don't think we have a choice. And I do expect that, even in places, like I said, where, people don't think about Texas as a leader in, carbon reduction, right? Because it's Texas oil. People think about New York, New England, and California because of the regulations that we've put in place to help drive toward that. But because of the lowering of costs in this new energy transition, we now see that wind is actually becoming cheaper than coal in many instances from a 30-year kind of timeline perspective. And the tax credits and other things have made Texas the biggest wind power in the United States by far. It dwarfs any other state. So I think that this is, the potential is for, whether you are a red or blue minded person, there's an opportunity in here for you. So if you're in a traditionally red state, like a Texas or a blue state, we should be coming together on carbon reduction solutions. It makes economic sense, and we need to do it from a climate change perspective. And the sooner that we start acting, the better. And like I said earlier, my compensation, I would say about a third of my compensation is linked to bonuses. And if we don't make our carbon reduction targets within Schneider Electric, I lose some of that bonus. So we take it very seriously internally, and we want to be a part of helping to digitize areas like buildings. That's my focus. We can't do things the same way. People are, as always, we're the opportunity and the obstacle. So I think that people need to change the way they do things. This building process that I outlined before is still a vision. This isn't, I guess I should have said that, it's not reality yet. We're enabling one piece of it at a time, not only by ourselves, but with key partners. And people are going to need to be, starting to use digital design solutions much more than we do today. And I don't mean PDF files, right? We want to move past PDF. We want to start sharing digital information, learning from projects that have taken place, and doing so at a much more rapid pace. So the good news is that the tech is here, right? From a tech perspective, I come from technology for over 20 years, Accenture at IBM before Schneider. I was an artificial intelligence leader at Accenture prior to joining Schneider. So I know that the artificial intelligence capabilities for things like generative design, to rapidly bring together sensor data to operate buildings, this is there. What we need to do is to get people to think differently and to collaborate and share information. And we need government policies where possible to help get that ball rolling in some cases, right? Whether it's, happens to be tax credit favorable, for larger renewable energy, opening up the grid, in some places where it's more constrained, so that we can have the ability to more easily sell back renewable energy that we put on our roofs. So I think that there's a number of things that need to happen. I think the first thing that we need to do is realize it's possible, and really all of us start to evangelize, the need to leverage digitization as a key part of this, and the new transition to renewable energy as a key part of it as well. So I would like to see, similar to Europe, that we start to look at the carbon footprint of every single building and manage it on an ongoing basis. I know New York has some targets around this already, but beyond just the ongoing electrical usage or energy usage within a building, but actually understanding what is the carbon footprint of all the materials going into that building when you're building it, and then tracking it on an ongoing basis. I speak with partners I have in the UK, and they joke a little bit in jest, but they're quite concerned because people design buildings in one way, and they get it approved from a government compliance perspective under one set of guidelines, and then when it's built, it's actually used for something very different, right? Which makes it much less energy efficient. And so I think that that's what I meant when I see this cycle, and we need to move beyond just designing for efficiency, which I think is extremely important. We need to actually watch the function and monitor it on an ongoing basis. So, using these energy indexes that are available, actually monitoring in buildings with sensors as to how they're operating, and holding people, at the end of the day, it is people and companies accountable for how they are being good corporate citizens as it relates to energy efficiency and carbon reductions, which, again, to go back to that climate slide, it's an imperative, right? So I think that the time to debate and talk about it is over. We really need to act and to be bold. And I think that, we need to force in our process people to think about, not only the cost of buildings and efficiency of buildings, but how can we better utilize our spaces that are already built, because a building that's already built is going to be less carbon intensive to build because it's already built. And how do we revamp that building to make it more energy efficient?
Excellent.
The way that it is. So does that help?
Excellent. Yeah, very much, Chris. So we have two more questions here from Aliza. Thanks for asking this question. So the USA is ranked number 2 in carbon emission, as we all know. Do you think this new administration will still pursue exiting the Paris Agreement?
No, I mean, they've come on record. I mean, I think that the words that they used was on day one, they're going to re-enter the Paris Accords, right? So I think that we can expect a more engaged process at a federal level, and continued hyper engagement at a state level, which we're already seeing in California, for example.
Excellent. Then another question from Aliza again. So Singapore has been the eco architecture for a while now, and they are thriving. Do you think the West should learn from them? And maybe I'll piggyback on that question because it's the topic we talked on earlier. And Boston being connected to so many cities internationally, does it make it also the hub where maybe we can have that sort of dialogue, exchange? And what's your thoughts on this with Boston specifically, and then Singapore, and how can we learn from each other and to accelerate? If it's so radical and it's so important, I feel we need to make drastic measures to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, Singapore is doing a lot of fantastic things and use cases, and we have operations there, so we're actively involved in some of those next generation buildings and also improving the efficiency of existing buildings. So, beyond what I call beyond leads buildings. So yes, I mean, we should certainly learn from Singapore. I think that Boston, because of its, I like to call it an idea capital, right? There's a lot of people who are within the universities who can help try out new things. And I think that, we need to move beyond those ideas into an action capital. And if we do that, I think that, we can not only learn from others, but we can become one of those leaders ourselves, right? So a lot of potential with the assets we have in Boston.
Excellent. And so with the perspective you have, what cities would you say, your top 5 cities that are really role models, that are inspiring you and thinking it's going really well in the right direction?
I think that Singapore is an easy one, but I'm not sure that I'm wholly satisfied with the way any of them are actually running. So I think that we need to do a lot more in terms of measuring and managing the existing building stock within developed countries. So I think like 80% of our stock is going to be here. It's not going to be going away. Whereas in places like India and China, there's a whole new building stock that's being developed. So I would look at it, through the lens of what they're doing with buildings. So in the United States, we really need to be in places like Boston thinking about how we can make our existing building stock more efficient. And I don't think that people have really opened up this idea of how do I need to change regulations and my permitting processes and things to enable that reinvention of buildings. So that's really important for it to happen. And I think that people don't think about the importance of innovation and regulation, right? But this is a fantastic opportunity. It kind of goes back, in Calgary, they saw this opportunity with excess office space when the oil bust happened to potentially move to housing. And the ideas were there, but the regulatory environment didn't make it easy, right? So the ideas are there. That's where we have to be more bold and creative in the developed, stock of buildings. When we're building the next generation of buildings in Asia, and particularly in China, there's a lot of really good things that China is doing at a massive scale, right? They're trying out all kinds of new electrical architectures and energy efficient architectures at scale. So I'm optimistic that we're going to learn a lot from some of the cities in China. Singapore is a very unique case in some ways. Maybe Asia is a little bit different because of the ability to capture and manage data. We saw in Toronto, not all cities are as excited to have that kind of digital, some of the privacy issues that come up with that also need to be considered. So I think that there'll be a cultural bias and things that we may need to make some decisions on as society. But I unfortunately don't see anybody as a shining model who's doing everything right just yet. I think that even in Singapore, we can do a lot more to help them toward their vision and goals to operate their buildings more efficiently, and yeah.
Excellent. So maybe last question. We have investors on the call today, including Nick Anderson from Keiretsu Forum. What would you say to investors? Is that a good time to invest in entrepreneurs in the green tech space, smart city, resilient cities, and so on? Is this the golden age of green?
Well, first I'll say, Schneider Electric, we are an investor too. So our innovation at the Edge team, we have a 500 million euro fund. And we're actively investing. We haven't stopped during the COVID period. So the short answer is not only do I think that, we're doing that, right? So this is a great time to be investing in things like innovative storage solutions, for example, for renewable energy. We're actively looking into if there are any startups on the phone, to partner with startups and with VCs. If you have companies in your portfolios that are in this area. I'm actively focused on partnering with those companies because we want to scale this. So I think that it's going to be in some cases, a startup kind of corporate strategic partner to help us scale some of these technologies more rapidly. And I think that's a great potential. So yeah, let's invest together and let's partner to scale it as fast as possible.
Excellent. I think that's a perfect way to end this discussion, and a perfect message. Capital is here. If you have a great idea, submit it to Chris Sowa or to us, and we can help you achieve these objectives. Thank you so much, Chris, for this great talk, and we look forward to more interaction. We are planning also a speaker meet and match after the event, and if you're willing also to stay up to the end of the event, we'll open the floor also for some networking.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Pleasure being here today.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
So my name is Adrien Chaussinand. Today I'm Head of Innovation and Partnership for Paris & Co, the Economic Development Agency of Paris Metropolitan Area. But before that, and when I met my friend Alistair, I was working for Bouygues, a conglomerate company that owns a lot of different businesses in the smart city. For example, we had construction, real estate, telecommunication, and media. During these 5 years working for this big company, I was in charge of innovation projects, and I helped the company, the real estate part of the company, to follow the trends of the district transformation. That's perfect. Thank you, Alistair.
No problem.
Okay, so you can just go to the first slide, please. Excellent. So yes, and as I said, yes, I was working for Bouygues, a very large company that was working on many businesses, and I was in charge of innovation projects that helped the real estate part of the company to follow the trends of the district transformation and to try to work and create businesses into this city. Of course, at that time, we were speaking a lot about smart homes, smart buildings, energy efficiency, technical problems that face the construction companies in this daily activity. But the truth is that after working 1 year in the company, you begin to understand that there is problems that are not directly, these problems are not impacting directly the life of your clients and the citizens. So my first question today is, what is the smart city mission statement? And I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah. So when I was thinking about it, and it's, I think, a very hard question, you can think about the Apple mission statement. Apple says it's not about technology at all. Apple is dedicated to the empowerment of man, to making personal computing accessible to each and every individual, so as to help change the way we think, work, learn, and communicate. How to compete, clearly. And actually, I think this statement could work also for smart cities. Just changing the words personal computing with the word common space. So yes, smart cities are here to make, let's say, the common space accessible to each and every individual, so has to help to change the way of they live, of course, they work, we learn, we communicate, and maybe more important, we live, because we are living in cities. So for startups that hearing us tonight, I wanted to share with you this message. Do not forget to build your missions with those thoughts. Every day, your technologies will impact the life of humans, change their behavior, and you have the responsibility to make them smarter, more creative, selfless, happier, or becoming the slave of your invention, control the way they make decisions. And that's the one biggest challenge cities we have to face in the next years. In Europe, for example, I was thinking about GDPR, the protection of data, personal data, and I think this subject of controlling people in the city is born with this idea to protect citizens from big companies or little companies that change the way of choosing stuff inside the cities. Okay, after showing those thoughts on the purpose of smart cities, let's talk a little bit about the main trends of city transformations. First, population is growing, and clearly people will continue to converge into mega cities. Cities will have to face and to invent new ways to let people going from a point A to a point B. And for example, co-working is one of the major answers we have seen in the last years. I remember the growth of WeWork. It has been really amazing the last past years. And we have to remember that their clients, they are not only startups, but also big companies, because they need to change the way they offer spaces to their employees. So it's about happiness. It's about, you have to grow, but you have to organize your growth and to make it smooth for everyone. Buildings also need to be renovated in this in urbanization, because we face also that some buildings have more than 100 years, and then you have to change them. We have plenty of materials that when we made these buildings before, and it's very interesting today to see the growth of recycling business, the way startups recycle these materials and create new value. And it's, I think, a trend that we have to look into the next years, because it will be interesting. We hope to see in the next years a huge amount of business created in the circular economy in terms of construction materials, but also in managing the waste generated by the user of the cities. Some cities aimed to halving the quantities of waste that they generate. Yes, I just came back to Paris a few months ago, and I saw in the streets many advertisements about throwing your waste, your green waste in new garbage. You have plenty of initiative of people that try to work with restaurants to bring the waste of restaurants into gardens and try to make compost with that. Really interesting trends. And business model, of course, we have to think about it too. The second part is also about the global warming and the impact on the cities and the infrastructure itself. And I think I remember, Alistair, when I was with you in Boston, the government was working on a strategy to adapt the city with the rise of the ocean level. I think a quarter of Boston space could be surrounded by ocean in the next years. A big challenge for Boston. Cities we have to offer the opportunity.
Actually, Adrien, they did cover this. The city of Boston was a presenter, and they did show us, how it would affect actually the city. Yep.
Okay, great. Good to hear that. Yep, and cities have to offer the opportunity to people to change their behavior, the way of using services, and even the way of owning things. And again, a big example, when we think about Uber, it would have been crazy to explain to our great parents that we don't want to own cars anymore today, but only to use the service of moving from point A to point B. Okay, so you change the way you use the city, and you reduce the impact of your life on global warming. So city could be a big answer to this big challenge of climate change. Third, it's all about technologies and the way we receive the information. We share emotions in the city. We get access to services. Personally, I clearly think that the infrastructure will have to react to the revolution of using stuff and using this data. So it has to be connected too. So I mean, infrastructure, buildings, roads, everything's in the city have to communicate with your phone, and with you. So it has to be, this is the way we call smart stuff, smart city. So this is, yeah, we hear more and more about infrastructure that is able to answer the pace of internet, the speed of internet, and 5G will, I think, be a kind of acceleration in that transformation. Okay, we can of course use IoT to change the smart city and generate data that needs to produce the services expected by the new generation. And finally, it's about taking good decisions together, because building smart city is also working together to build a place to live together. People expect to live customized experiences. So technically, it means product flexible and adaptable services. And it's a real challenge because we are in the age of standardization. We need a system more and more safe, and in the same time, more and more customized. And this is where the two big, I think one of the big challenge of the next years is. And we need also to make this process or these services scalable. So I won't see a future only with robots. That's not the future I see, but more services led by humans and helped by AI and machines. Okay, speaking about human solution and initiative, I wanted to follow my presentation with few examples that I crossed along my career. And I think the organization of the urban organization of Paris is one of the answers to these main challenges. If you see the map of Paris, you see that you can do everything with only 20 minutes walking. And it means that you can almost live all your life in a 20-minute walk cycle. And this is a crazy answer from a city to the way we should live our life. And it's also an answer to the COVID crisis, actually, because people, they are almost, the clusters of people are only, you can walk along this cycle and find everything you need for living your life. Really interesting. And co-working, if you see the map of co-working places, are just placed in the center of each cycles. Okay, next. So for mobility, Paris organized its urbanization. About sustainability, it's an example from the US and from Canada. I chose to show you Sidewalk Labs districts. It's a full wood district. So when they thought about this project, they said, okay, we need to organize the production of the buildings itself. So create business by creating districts. in Canada, they have a lot of wood, they have plenty of forests, and they don't have the capacity, the factories to transform this wood into buildings. So when Google won the district call of tender from Toronto City, they offered, they also explained to the cities and to the citizens they will create jobs, and they will build this building by creating factories to build this building and to improve the capacity of Canada and of Toronto to create smart and sustainable districts. So it's not only creating districts, it's also creating the way to continue to build the city in a sustainable way. Third example. Thank you, Alistair. A really nice initiative from Boston, from MIT. I think, Alistair, you know these people. It's about Biobot. Biobot, these guys find a way to learn from the sewers of the public sewers to make public health observatories. So you can detect pandemic situations, you can detect drugs, and you can say that this district is in a good health or not. And that was a very nice initiative. I think today they are trying to open more cities, more districts, because there is a lot of problems about GDPR, privacy of people. You can work only on one building, only on one district, but you can see the impact of public policy. For example, they try to reduce the drug consumption of a district, and you can see the results in live. And I think it's a real nice tool for the future of the cities and for the health of the population. Okay. You have two more examples. Perfect. I think it's about also the safety of the streets. I wanted to imagine a little bit the future of using image recognition. So using AI, you can see the traffic, you can manage the traffic of people, but you can also change the way people live the experience of a street. And for example, in Paris, but I think in Boston too, sometimes you close some roads to let people walk along the streets and on the roads, and you can see if when you close a street, you can count the people, you can try to have statistics to know if you made well or not, if people came, if people where the people like to walk, where the cars and the people are too close, and it creates dangerous situation. And we will see in the next years, I think, many initiatives like this to understand better how people walk, how the people move into the city, and how people interact into the city. That will be very interesting. And again, we will have some questions about GDPR on these topics. And finally, you have also the question of governance in districts, how people choose the city they want to be inside. So Co-Urbanize it's also a startups from Boston, and they are thinking about how to let people express themselves on projects the city wants to build, or a real estate developer wants to build. At the first time I met this startup, I was thinking they are dreamers. They think they will let people say everything they want. And for example, real estate developers, they don't want to understand, to hear all this criticism. But at the end of the day, if you let people express what they think, you can change a little bit the project. You can speak with them and change maybe the next building you will make with their recommendation and with the ideas. And letting people speaking always create new ideas and always makes better projects. And I think it's the last slide that will explain much more better how I see the smart city. It's about Venture Cafe. One of the mission that I will have in Paris next year, I think it will be to create the same kind of place to meet and to connect people together, create better interactions, but also the way to let people have built new businesses. And I think this is the way of building smart cities. So yes, Boston is very inspiring, but I think come to Paris, startups, and come to build the future together.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Adrien. Thank you very much for being there so late on your side. This was really good, great examples. We have a couple of questions for you. So one question is for why Urbanize when we can work from anywhere?
Excellent question. I think don't say that to a real estate developer. First, I think people need to separate their housing life to their office life. So I heard some projects to try to build offices in the first floor of buildings, and then you have the flats, the housing, but it's only a way of answering the question. I think, yeah, you can work everywhere from the world, but in terms of human contact, you will need sometimes to see people, because you build project not only with sharing ideas, but also to sharing moments, emotions. And even we know that we can do many things on internet with Zoom and by speaking just together. Sometimes you need also to see people, to see how they interact with you, and creating big groups we need to be closer. Yeah.
Excellent, Adrien. And then one question for you is, what companies have you seen the last 2-3 years that have blown your mind, that are in sort of relation to what we're talking about today, which is the eco-city revolution?
That's a good question, because I think it depends on the topics we are speaking about. If we speak about the entire city vision, I think Sidewalk Labs from the company from Google is one of the best answer to many technical questions. But in terms of best organizations to think smart cities, Boston is really managing the growth of its infrastructure, and in the same time trying to mix the population. Many initiatives are very interesting in Boston, clearly. So yeah, trying to think about other startups or stuff that are really blowing my mind.
There was a company you told, and I don't know if you can reveal the name, but there was a company you told me this is going to change the game in building houses and buildings.
We are speaking about Catera.
Catera, okay.
Yeah, Catera is kind of WeWork for builders. So it's half of the company is building a software to replicate very quickly the way of building building stuff, and in the same way they are building factories to produce the buildings and the infrastructure. So they are beginning to make scalable something that was for the last centuries not scalable. Creating a building, it's always something very local, and they are thinking how to replicate the way of making buildings everywhere in the world. And that's a way to reduce the waste of when you do a building. It's a way to reduce the energy. I really want to see Catera in 5 years to see if they are able to reach their goal.
Excellent, excellent. And so we are going to enter now in a networking session, and maybe any last, thing to save humanity, something to inspire us, to go into the networking session. I'm just going to show a couple of slides to inspire you. So basically, we started the day saying we want to go back to places like Venture Cafe, CIC. We want a healthier world. We want to see new transportations, helping us be closer to our loved ones, have fun maybe on new types of transportations in cities, see clean energy so we don't have pollution, no health issues. What's the future of our housing, the smart grid, and so on? Can we collaborate between cities to make things happen faster? How can we give everyone a voice to get a better chance in fixing what's broken? What can we do in Boston? How can we fix things? How can we leverage cities? Adrien, please finalize us today with some inspiring vision of yours. Tough question, loaded question, but no pressure.
I think the only city that I can see when I close my eyes is the city of everyone, without the shape of the buildings, the shape of the city, but only working together to learn how to live together. So yeah, I really think solving the problem of cities is first solving the problem of living together.
I think I agree with you as well, Adrien. Thank you so much, Adrien, for being here. You can stay with us. We're going to open the floor now for those who want to network. We'll also have a post-event speaker-only meet and greet gathering because it was asked. They did find synergies possible to do together to actually advance things. Maybe we can do another event, number 2, bigger, bit better, stronger, maybe physical next year when things go back to normal. So please feel free to raise your hand if you want to stay in the networking session, and then we'll promote you to a panelist, and we can quickly do a round table, get to know you, and then go from there. Otherwise, see you next time.